Welcome to the Ghastly Journal, where we explore tales of the supernatural and the unexplained. Taking us back to 1980s Mexico is tonight's story, where a young girl's claims about ghostly visitors would lead to a haunting mystery that still sends chills down the spines of those who hear it. Nestled in the shadows of the Sierra Madre mountains was the small town of San Isidro, a place where time seemed to move more slowly than in the bustling cities. Between whitewashed buildings with terracotta roofs, cobblestone streets wound, and with the daily rhythm of local life, the central plaza buzzed. Most residents knew one another by name, and strangers were quickly noticed. It was the kind of place where traditions ran deep and between generations, superstitions were whispered. A quiet child with observant eyes that seemed to take in more than they should, Isabel Vega was 8 years old in the summer of 1980. She lived with her grandmother, Dona Lucia, in a modest home on the edge of town, surrounded by fields of marigolds that bloomed golden in the warm Mexican sun. 2 years earlier, Isabel's parents had moved north for work, promising to send for her when they were settled. At first, the letters and money came regularly, then sporadically, until they stopped altogether 6 months ago. Known in San Isidro as a curandera, a traditional healer who used herbs and ancient remedies to treat everything from fevers to broken hearts, was Dona Lucia. Some in town whispered that her powers extended beyond simple healing, that she could communicate with spirits and see things hidden from ordinary eyes. Often, Isabel helped her grandmother gather herbs and prepare remedies, learning the old ways that had been passed down through generations of women in their family. The veil between worlds is thinnest for the young and the old, Dona Lucia would tell Isabel as they worked. What adults have forgotten, children can see, and what others never knew, the elderly remember. What her grandmother meant, Isabel didn't understand until the night of June 24th, the feast of San Juan. The celebration had been joyous, with music filling the plaza and the scent of roasting corn and sweet bread hanging in the air. In the gathering darkness, children ran with sparklers that left trails of light, and to the mariachi band that played in the gazebo, couples danced. Isabel had eaten too many churros and fallen asleep on a bench while Dona Lucia talked with friends. When Isabel opened her eyes, it was nearly midnight, but she wasn't in the plaza anymore. She was in her bed at home. The window was open to catch the night breeze. Like ghostly forms, the curtains billowed, and on the wall, moonlight cast strange shadows. Isabel was about to call for her grandmother when she realized she wasn't alone. A girl stood at the foot of her bed, perhaps 11 or 12 years old, with long dark hair and a white dress that seemed to glow in the moonlight. She was beautiful but sad, her eyes holding a sorrow too deep for someone so young. "They took us," the girl whispered, her voice like leaves rustling in the wind. "They're going to take more. You have to stop them." Pulling the blanket up to her chin, her heart racing, Isabel asked, "Who are you? Who took you?" The girl's form seemed to flicker like a candle flame in a draft. "My name is Marisol. I lived in Aua Clara, the next village. We were playing by the old church when a man came. He said he had puppies in his car." She looked down at her bare feet. "We never came home. We..." Isabel's voice trembled. Marisol nodded, and suddenly she wasn't alone. 2 more children appeared beside her, a boy of about 9 and a younger girl perhaps 6. They wore the same sorrowful expressions, their eyes hollow with unspoken horrors. "Miguel and Lucia," Marisol said, "and there were others before us. More will follow if you don't help." Isabel wanted to hide under her covers, to close her eyes and wish the ghostly children away, but something in their expressions held her. "What can I do? I'm just a kid." "You can see us," Miguel said. "The man who took us is coming to San Isidro. He watches the children at the school. He has a green truck with a dent in the door. He smiles." Little Lucia added, her voice small and frightened, "but his eyes are cold." "Why me?" Isabel asked. "Why not tell a grown-up?" "We've tried," Marisol explained. "But adults can't hear us. Your grandmother says you have the gift. You can see what others cannot." Before Isabel could ask more questions, the children began to fade, their forms becoming transparent in the moonlight. "Wait," Isabel called. "How will I find him? What do I do?" "The carnival comes tomorrow," Marisol's voice was growing fainter. "He will be there. Watch for the green truck, and the medallion. He wears a silver medallion with a wolf's head. Be careful, Isabel. He can sense those who see too much." Then they were gone, leaving Isabel alone in her moonlit room, the curtains still now, as if the ghosts had taken the breeze with them. She sat frozen, unsure if what she had seen was a dream or something more. Eventually, she crept from her bed and padded down the hall to her grandmother's room. Awake, sitting in her rocking chair by the window, her hands working a string of wooden beads, was Donna Lucia. She didn't seem surprised when Isabel appeared in the doorway. "You've had visitors," she said, not a question, but a statement. Isabel nodded, tears filling her eyes. "3 children. They said a man took them and he's coming here to take more kids." Donna Lucia beckoned Isabel to her lap, her aged arms wrapping around the child in a protective embrace. "Tell me everything, Mija. Leave nothing out." And so Isabel described the ghostly children and their warning. When she finished, Donna Lucia was silent for a long time, her weathered face grave in the dim light. "Abuela," Isabel whispered. "Were they real or was it just a bad dream?" Donna Lucia sighed deeply. "The dead do not speak without reason, Isabel. If these spirits sought you out, it was because they believe you can help them find peace." She stroked Isabel's hair. "But such matters are dangerous, especially for a child. They said I have to stop him, that he's coming to San Isidro. We will speak to Officer Mendoza in the morning," Donna Lucia decided. "He is a good man who respects the old ways. He will listen." But Isabel knew, even as she nodded against her grandmother's shoulder, that the police wouldn't believe a story about ghost children. Adults rarely believed in such things, and those who did were often feared or ridiculed. Even Officer Mendoza, who always tipped his hat respectfully to Donna Lucia, would need more than the word of an 8-year-old who claimed to see spirits. The next morning, Isabel woke to the distant music of the traveling carnival that had set up overnight at the edge of town. Each year, it arrived for the week-long celebration following the Feast of San Juan, bringing rides, games, and exotic performers from distant places. In normal times, it was the highlight of the summer for the children of San Isidro. But today, the cheerful music filled Isabel with dread. Donna Lucia had prepared a special breakfast of chilaquiles with eggs, but Isabel could barely eat. The faces of the ghost children haunted her thoughts, their sad eyes pleading for her help. "Eat, Mijita," her grandmother encouraged. "You will need your strength today." After breakfast, they walked together to the small police station near the plaza. At his desk filling out paperwork with a stubby pencil was Officer Mendoza. He smiled when he saw them, rising to offer Donna Lucia his chair. "What brings you to see me today, Donna Lucia?" he asked. "Not trouble with those boys throwing rocks at your chickens again, I hope." "It is a more serious matter, Rodrigo," Donna Lucia said, her voice low. "Isabel has something to tell you." Officer Mendoza turned kind eyes to Isabel, crouching down to her level. "What is it, Pequeña? You can tell me." Isabel glanced at her grandmother, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, she described her midnight visitors and their warning. As she spoke, Officer Mendoza's expression changed from indulgent interest to a concerned frown. "A green truck, you say, with a dent in the door?" he asked when she had finished. Isabel nodded eagerly. "And the man wears a silver medallion with a wolf's head." Officer Mendoza exchanged a look with Donna Lucia. "There have been reports from other villages," he said carefully. "Children gone missing. A green truck was mentioned in Aua Clara 3 months ago, but there was no proof, no witnesses." "The children said they were from Aua Clara," Isabel said. "Marisol, Miguel, and Lucia." A shadow passed over Officer Mendoza's face. "Those names, they matched the missing children reports. Isabel felt a chill run down her spine despite the warm morning. "Then you believe me?" Officer Mendoza ran a hand through his graying hair. "I believe that something strange is happening, Isabel. Whether it's ghosts or not, I cannot say, but I will keep an eye on the carnival today and watch for this green truck." He patted her shoulder. "You were right to come to me." Relief flooded through Isabel. Maybe she wouldn't have to face this alone after all. "But," Officer Mendoza added, his voice turning stern, "I want you to stay away from the carnival today, both of you. If there is a dangerous person there, it's no place for a child or an elderly woman." "The spirits came to Isabel for a reason," Dona Lucia said. "She has a role to play in this." Officer Mendoza shook his head firmly. "Not this time, Dona Lucia. Let the police handle this matter." He looked at Isabel again. "Promise me you'll stay home today, Pequeña." Isabel crossed her fingers behind her back. "I promise." As they left the police station, Dona Lucia was unusually quiet. They walked through the plaza where vendors were setting up stalls for the day's market. The scent of fresh bread and flowers filled the air, but Isabel couldn't enjoy it. Her thoughts were at the carnival, wondering if the man with the wolf medallion was already there, watching, waiting. "Abuela," she said finally. "Officer Mendoza won't find him. The ghosts came to me. I have to help." Dona Lucia stopped walking and looked down at her granddaughter, her dark eyes searching Isabel's face. "There are dangerous things in this world, Isabel. Some wear the faces of men, and some have no face at all. Are you certain this is your path to walk?" Isabel thought of the ghost children, their sad eyes and pleading voices. "I'm sure, Abuela." Dona Lucia nodded as if Isabel had passed some test. "Then we will go to the carnival, but not as we are now." She changed direction, leading Isabel toward their home. "First, we must prepare." In their small kitchen, Dona Lucia opened a wooden chest that Isabel had never been allowed to touch. From it she removed a small pouch of herbs, a vial of clear liquid, and a silver cross on a leather cord. "The herbs are for protection," she explained as she worked, crushing the dried leaves and flowers in a stone mortar. "The agua bendita, holy water, will help you see more clearly. And the cross," she held up the tarnished silver. "This belonged to my grandmother and her grandmother before her. It has power against those with darkness in their hearts." She mixed the crushed herbs with a little of the holy water to make a paste, then used her thumb to mark Isabel's forehead with it. "To shield your thoughts from those who would read them," she murmured. Then she placed the silver cross around Isabel's neck. "Keep this hidden but close to your heart." Finally, she poured the remaining holy water into a small glass bottle with a cork stopper and handed it to Isabel. "If you find yourself in danger, open this and throw it at the feet of your enemy. It will create confusion and give you time to escape." Isabel tucked the bottle into the pocket of her dress, feeling both frightened and important. "What about you, Abuela? Don't you need protection, too?" Dona Lucia smiled, the wrinkles around her eyes deepening. "I have lived a long life, Majida. I carry my protection in my bones." She took Isabel's hand. "Now let us go to the carnival. But remember, we are there to watch, not to confront. If you see the man, you come to me immediately." "Understood?" Isabel nodded solemnly. "Understood." The carnival had transformed the dusty field at the edge of town into a riot of color and sound. Striped tents housed games of chance and sideshow attractions. A small Ferris wheel turned lazily against the blue sky, and children shrieked with delight on a spinning ride shaped like teacups. The air smelled of cotton candy, popcorn, and the underlying tang of machine oil. Despite the cheerful surroundings, Isabel felt a sense of unease as she and Dona Lucia passed through the entrance. The mark on her forehead seemed to tingle, and the silver cross felt warm against her skin beneath her dress. "Keep your eyes open," Dona Lucia murmured. "But do not stare. We are just a grandmother and child enjoying the carnival, nothing more." They wandered among the attractions, Dona Lucia occasionally buying Isabel a treat or letting her try a game. All the while, Isabel scanned the crowds for a man with a wolf medallion or the green truck that might be parked nearby. They had been at the carnival for nearly 2 hours when Isabel spotted Officer Mendoza. He was in his uniform, speaking with one of the carnival workers near the Ferris wheel. Isabel tugged at her grandmother's hand. "Abuela, Officer Mendoza is here. Should we tell him we came anyway?" Dona Lucia shook her head. "Not yet. He would only send us home and our work is not done." They continued their circuit of the carnival, moving toward the back where fewer people gathered. Here, the tents were smaller and more mysterious, offering fortune-telling and glimpses of strange curiosities from distant lands. And beyond these, partially hidden behind a stand of trees, Isabel saw something that made her heart skip. A green truck, its door dented exactly as the ghost children had described. "Abuela," she whispered, pointing discreetly. "The truck, it's here." Dona Lucia's grip on Isabel's hand tightened. "So, our spirit spoke true. Come, we must find Officer Mendoza now." But as they turned to leave, a man stepped from behind one of the small tents. He was tall and thin, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that reminded Isabel of a documentary she had once seen about wolves, amber-colored and watchful. Around his neck, partially visible above his shirt collar, was a silver chain. The man smiled when he saw them, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "Are you lost, Senora? This area is for carnival staff only." Dona Lucia straightened her shoulders, her face betraying nothing. "Forgive us. We were looking for the fortune teller. My granddaughter has never had her future read." The man's gaze shifted to Isabel, and she felt a cold sensation in her stomach. The mark on her forehead burned, and she fought the urge to touch it. "The fortune teller is taking a break," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "But perhaps I can help. I'm somewhat sensitive to the spirit world myself." He touched his shirt collar, and Isabel glimpsed the wolf head medallion beneath. "I sense your granddaughter has a special gift. Am I right?" Dona Lucia tugged Isabel closer to her side. "All children are gifted in their own way, Senor. Now, if you'll excuse us, we should rejoin the main carnival." They began to walk away, but the man moved to block their path. "Don't rush off. I'd love to speak more with you both. I have a special show for children with unique abilities, like your granddaughter." His smile widened, revealing 2 perfect teeth. "I could show her things that would amaze her, other special children who work with me." Isabel's blood turned to ice. This was him, the man the ghosts had warned her about, and now he had seen her, had somehow sensed what she could do. The silver cross burned against her chest, and she reached for the bottle of holy water in her pocket. Before she could withdraw it, a familiar voice called out, "Dona Lucia, Isabel, there you are." Officer Mendoza strode toward them, his hand resting casually on his holstered pistol. His eyes flicked from the old woman and child to the bearded man, taking in the situation with a policeman's trained gaze. "I thought you promised to stay home today," he said to Isabel, though his attention remained on the stranger. "We decided a little celebration would do us good," Dona Lucia replied smoothly. "And who is your friend, Rodrigo?" Officer Mendoza's expression hardened. "We haven't been introduced." The bearded man's smile never faltered, but Isabel saw something dangerous flash in his wolf-like eyes. "Ernesto Vargas," he said, extending a hand that Officer Mendoza did not take. "I'm with the carnival, entertainment director." "Is that your truck?" Officer Mendoza nodded toward the green vehicle. "It is," Vargas confirmed. "Is there a problem, officer?" "Perhaps. I'd like to ask you a few questions, Senor Vargas." "Alone?" He looked at Dona Lucia. "Take Isabel home now. I'll stop by later." Dona Lucia nodded. But as she turned to leave, Vargas spoke again. "Such a special child," he said softly. "We'll meet again, Isabel. I'm certain of it. The way he said her name sent chills down Isabel's spine. Officer Mendoza stepped between them, his back to Isabel and her grandmother. Go now, he said over his shoulder. Quickly. They hurried away, Dona Lucia's grip on Isabel's hand almost painful. They didn't speak until they had left the carnival grounds and were on the road back to town. He knows, Isabel whispered. He knows I can see them. Yes, Dona Lucia agreed grimly. And that makes you a threat to him. What will Officer Mendoza do? Question him. Search his truck, perhaps, but without evidence. She shook her head. The law has limits, Mija, and men like that know how to stay just within them. Then the children will never be saved, Isabel said, tears welling in her eyes. I failed them. Dona Lucia stopped walking and knelt before her granddaughter, taking Isabel's small face between her weathered hands. You have not failed, Isabel. You have brought this evil into the light. That is the first step. But now we must be cautious. Vargas knows what you are, and he will not forget. That night, Isabel couldn't sleep. She lay in bed listening to the distant sounds of the carnival, wondering if Officer Mendoza had arrested Vargas or if the man with the wolf medallion was still free, still hunting. The mark Dona Lucia had placed on her forehead had faded, but Isabel could still feel its protective presence like a shield against dark thoughts. She must have dozed eventually, because suddenly the ghost children were there again, standing at the foot of her bed. Marisol's face was drawn with worry. He's still free, she said without preamble. The policeman found nothing in his truck. He's too clever, Miguel added. He hides his wickedness well. Little Lucia moved closer to Isabel's bed, her ghostly form shimmering in the darkness. He knows about you now. He'll come for you. Isabel sat up, clutching her blanket. What can I do? Officer Mendoza questioned him, but he had no proof. There is proof, Marisol said. Where he takes the children. An old hacienda in the hills, abandoned after the revolution. That's where he... Her voice faltered. That's where our bodies are. Miguel finished for her, in the dry well behind the house. Isabel felt sick. These children standing before her were dead, their bodies discarded like trash. And there would be more victims if Vargas wasn't stopped. How do I find this place? She asked. We can show you, Marisol said. But not tonight. He's watching your house, waiting. Isabel gasped. He's outside now. The three ghosts nodded in unison. He won't try anything yet, Miguel assured her. The policeman is watching too, from his car down the street. But Vargas is patient. He'll wait for his chance. Tomorrow, Marisol said, when the sun is highest and he thinks you're at school, we'll lead you to the hacienda then, but you must come alone. Alone? Isabel's voice trembled. But my grandmother. He'll be watching her, too, Marisol explained. And the policeman. You're small. You can slip away unseen. Isabel wanted to refuse, to say it was too dangerous, that she was just a child. But the faces of the ghost children, filled with hope and trust, stopped her. They had been children, too. They had trusted the wrong person and paid with their lives. I'll come, she promised. But I'll need to leave a message for my grandmother and Officer Mendoza, so they can follow if I don't return. Marisol nodded. That's wise. But be careful what you write. If he finds it first. I understand. Isabel hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Are there others like you? More children he's taken. The ghost children exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Many, Marisol finally said. Some have moved on. Others are too afraid to appear, even to someone who can see us. They hide in the shadows of that terrible place. And there's one more, Miguel added. A girl from your town, Rosa Diaz. He took her last year, before the carnival came. No one connected her disappearance to him. Isabel's eyes widened. Rosa? But everyone thinks she went to live with her aunt in Mexico City. That's what he told her parents, Lucia said softly. He pretended to be from the city. Said her aunt had sent him. Rosa was waiting at the bus stop. No one else was around. Isabel remembered Rosa, a 12-year-old girl with bright eyes and a quick laugh. One day she was there, the next gone, with only a hastily explained story about an aunt needing help with a new baby. Her body isn't in the well, Marisol said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She's still alive. In the basement of the hacienda, but not for much longer. He keeps them sometimes, the ones he thinks are special, until he tires of them. A surge of determination pushed through Isabel's fear. Rosa was alive. There was still someone to save, not just spirits to avenge. Tomorrow, she said firmly. At noon, I'll meet you at the edge of town by the old oak tree. The ghost children nodded, their forms already beginning to fade. Be careful, Isabel, Marisol warned as she disappeared. He's more dangerous than you know. After they were gone, Isabel crept to her window and peered through the curtains. The street below was dark and seemingly empty, but she thought she could make out the shape of Officer Mendoza's car parked under a tree at the corner. And there, in the shadows across from her house, was the gleam of something metallic, a wolf's head medallion catching the moonlight. Vargas was watching, just as the ghosts had said, waiting for his chance. Isabel didn't return to bed. Instead, she took a pencil and paper from her small desk and began to write. The note was brief but clear, the location of the abandoned hacienda, what she expected to find there, and why she had to go alone. She addressed it to both her grandmother and Officer Mendoza, then slipped it into her school book, where Dona Lucia would be sure to find it when she discovered Isabel missing. The next morning, Isabel went through her normal routine, eating breakfast and dressing for school as if nothing was wrong. Dona Lucia seemed distracted, glancing frequently out the windows and keeping Isabel close as they walked to the small schoolhouse at the edge of the plaza. Be vigilant today, Majida, her grandmother warned as they reached the school gate. Stay with your teachers and friends. Do not wander off alone. I won't, Abuela, Isabel promised, the lie bitter on her tongue. She hated deceiving her grandmother. But what choice did she have? Rosa was alive, and time was running out. Dona Lucia hugged her tightly, then stood watching as Isabel entered the schoolyard. Isabel looked back once to wave, wondering if it might be the last time she saw her grandmother. The thought brought tears to her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had to be brave now. School proceeded normally until the lunch break at noon. While the other children played in the yard, Isabel slipped through a gap in the fence that the teachers rarely noticed. Her heart pounded as she made her way through back alleys and gardens, avoiding the main streets where she might be seen. The old oak tree stood at the northern edge of San Isidro, its massive branches offering shade to generations of travelers leaving or entering the town. As Isabel approached, she saw no sign of the ghost children, but she knew they were near. The air around the tree felt different, cooler, with a slight electric tingle that raised the hairs on her arms. I'm here, she whispered. Show me the way. A shimmer in the air beside her coalesced into Marisol's translucent form. You came. I wasn't sure you would. I promised, Isabel said simply. Where are the others? Ahead, marking the path. We must hurry. Vargas is not at your house now. He's at the carnival, but he'll check on you soon. Isabel nodded, swallowing her fear. Lead the way. They left the road, following a narrow trail into the hills that rose behind San Isidro. The path was overgrown in places, suggesting it hadn't been used regularly in years. Isabel stumbled over rocks and roots, but Marisol never paused, her ghostly form gliding effortlessly ahead. After what felt like hours, but was probably no more than 45 minutes, they crested a rise, and Isabel saw the hacienda below them in a small valley. It had once been grand, with white walls and a red-tiled roof, but now it was a crumbling ruin. Windows gaped like empty eye sockets, and parts of the roof had collapsed. Behind the main house was a stable, its doors hanging askew, and beyond that, barely visible, the stone circle of a well. Miguel and Lucia waited for them at the edge of the clearing, their ghostly forms more distinct now, as if proximity to their resting place gave them strength. "He's not here," Miguel reported. "But he could return any time. We need to be quick." "Where's Rosa?" Isabel asked, her voice hushed despite the apparent emptiness of the place. "In the basement," Lucia said, pointing to a heavy wooden door at the side of the house. "Through there, down the stairs, but it's locked. You'll need the key." "Where is it?" "Inside. On a hook by the kitchen door. But be careful, Isabel." "The house." Lucia hesitated. "Not empty," Miguel finished for her. "There are others like us. Angry ones, confused. They may not help you." Isabel touched the silver cross beneath her dress, drawing strength from its solid presence. "I have to try. For Rosa. For all of you." The ghost children led her to a broken window at the back of the house where she could climb in without cutting herself on the remaining glass. The interior was dark and dusty, with cobwebs draping the corners and mouse droppings scattered across the floor. It smelled of decay and something else, something chemical that burned Isabel's nose. She followed Marisol through what had once been a grand dining room, its long table still in place, though one end had rotted and collapsed. The kitchen beyond was in better condition, with stone counters and an old wood-burning stove that had withstood the years of abandonment. And there, hanging on a hook by a door that must lead to the basement, was a large iron key. "Hurry," Marisol urged. "Take it and free Rosa." Isabel reached for the key, but as her fingers closed around the cold metal, a voice spoke from the shadows of the pantry. "He'll kill you, too, you know." Isabel spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs. A boy stood there, older than Miguel, perhaps 13 or 14. Unlike the other ghosts, he wasn't transparent. He looked solid, real, until Isabel noticed that his feet didn't quite touch the floor. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Javier," the boy replied. "I was his first. 10 years ago, before he learned to be careful." He moved closer, floating rather than walking. "You shouldn't have come here, little one. This is a place of death." "I came for Rosa," Isabel said, clutching the key tightly. "She's still alive. I have to help her." Javier's expression darkened. "The living don't belong here. This is our place now. Our pain, our memory." Other shapes began to materialize around the kitchen. Children of various ages, all with the same hollow eyes and sorrowful expressions. Some bore marks of violence that made Isabel want to look away, but she forced herself to meet their gaze. "I understand your pain," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "But Rosa is suffering now, today. I can save her if you'll let me." "And what about us?" a girl with a bruised neck demanded. "Who saved us?" "No one," Isabel admitted. "And that was wrong. But I can make sure Vargas never hurts anyone again. I can tell the police where to find your bodies so your families can bury you properly, so you can rest." The ghost children murmured among themselves, a sound like wind through dry leaves. Finally, Javier spoke again. "The girl is in the last room on the right. She's weak. He hasn't given her food in days." "Thank you," Isabel said, turning toward the basement door. "Wait," Javier called. "Take this." He held out his hand, and in it was a small pocket knife. When Isabel hesitated, he added, "It was mine. I dropped it before. It's real. You might need it." Isabel took the knife, surprised by its solid weight in her palm. "I'll come back," she promised. "With help." The basement door creaked loudly as she unlocked it, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Isabel wished she had thought to bring a flashlight, but it was too late for regrets now. She would have to rely on what little light filtered through the dirty windows above. The stairs were slippery with moisture, and Isabel had to feel her way carefully, one hand on the damp wall for support. At the bottom, the darkness was nearly complete, but a faint glow came from somewhere ahead. Moonlight through a high window, perhaps. Or... As Isabel's eyes adjusted, she realized the glow was coming from beneath a door at the end of a short corridor. There were other doors along the way, all standing open to reveal empty rooms with ominous stains on the floors and walls, but the last door was closed, with light seeping around its edges. Isabel approached cautiously, the pocket knife clutched in one hand, the bottle of holy water in the other. She pressed her ear to the wood but heard nothing. Taking a deep breath, she tried the handle. Locked. The key from upstairs didn't fit this lock. Isabel bit her lip, thinking. Then she remembered something her grandmother had once told her: locks keep the honest out. The determined find another way. Kneeling, Isabel peered through the keyhole. The room beyond was indeed lit by candles arranged in a circle on the floor. And in the center of that circle, tied to a chair, was Rosa Diaz. She looked terrible, thin and pale, her once vibrant face now gaunt with hunger and fear. Her eyes were closed, but Isabel could see the slight rise and fall of her chest. Still alive, as the ghosts had said, but barely. "Rosa," Isabel whispered through the keyhole. "Rosa, wake up. I've come to help you." The girl in the chair stirred slightly but didn't open her eyes. Isabel tried again, louder this time. "Rosa, it's Isabel Vega. I'm going to get you out." This time, Rosa's eyes fluttered open. She looked around in confusion before her gaze settled on the keyhole where Isabel's eye was visible. "Isabel?" Her voice was a dry croak. "How? Why are you here? You have to leave. He'll be back soon." "I'm not leaving without you," Isabel insisted. "Stand back from the door if you can." Rosa shook her head weakly. "I'm tied to the chair. I can't move." Isabel examined the lock again, then remembered the knife Javier had given her. It was old but seemed sturdy. She inserted the blade into the keyhole and twisted, jiggling it the way she had seen in a movie once. Nothing happened. Frustrated, she looked around for another way in. The door was solid wood, too strong for her to break down, but the walls of the old hacienda were crumbling in places. Perhaps. She moved to the wall beside the door, running her hands over the rough stone. Near the floor, she felt a spot where the mortar had eroded away between the stones. Using the knife, she began to dig at it, prying loose small pieces of mortar and rock. It was slow work, and her fingers were soon raw and bleeding. But Isabel kept at it. She could hear Rosa's labored breathing from within the room, spurring her on. Finally, she had created a hole large enough to reach her arm through. "Rosa," she called softly. "I'm going to try to reach the lock from this side." "Where is the key?" "On a nail by the door," Rosa replied, her voice a little stronger now. "But hurry, Isabel. Please hurry." Isabel stretched her arm through the hole, feeling blindly along the wall until her fingers brushed metal, the key. She grasped it and pulled it back through the hole, then scrambled to the door and unlocked it. The room beyond was small and windowless, lit only by the circle of candles. Strange symbols had been drawn on the floor and walls, and the air smelled of incense and something metallic that Isabel recognized with horror as blood. Rosa sat in the center, bound to a wooden chair with thick rope. She was dressed in a white nightgown similar to what the ghost children had been wearing, and her dark hair had been arranged in 2 long braids. She looked up at Isabel with eyes too large for her thin face. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "It's too dangerous." "I had to," Isabel said, moving quickly to untie Rosa's bonds. "The ghosts told me you were here." Rosa's eyes widened. "You've seen them too?" "The children." Isabel nodded as she worked on the knots. Marisol, Miguel, and Lucia. They led me here. There are so many others, Rosa said, her voice breaking. He made me watch as he. She couldn't finish. I know, Isabel soothed, finally freeing Rosa's hands. But it's over now. We're going to get out of here, and then the police will come for him. Rosa rubbed her wrists where the ropes had chafed them raw. I can't walk, she admitted. He hasn't let me out of this chair in days. Isabel looked around the room, her gaze falling on a walking stick leaning against the wall. She retrieved it and helped Rosa to her feet. The older girl swayed dangerously, leaning heavily on both Isabel and the stick. Just to the stairs, Isabel encouraged. The ghosts will help us. They want him stopped as much as we do. Slowly, painfully, they made their way out of the room and down the corridor toward the stairs. Rosa grew stronger with each step, as if freedom itself was lending her strength. They had just reached the bottom of the stairs when they heard it, the sound of a car engine approaching the hacienda. He's back, Rosa whispered, terror flooding her face. Isabel, run. Leave me and run. No, Isabel said firmly. We go together. Up the stairs, quickly. They climbed as fast as Rosa's weakened state would allow, emerging into the kitchen just as they heard a car door slam outside. The ghost children were waiting for them, their faces anxious. The back window, Marisol urged. The way you came in. Hurry. Isabel helped Rosa across the kitchen, but the older girl stumbled, nearly falling. She was too weak, Isabel realized with despair. They wouldn't make it before Vargas entered the house. Hide, Javier appeared beside them, pointing to the pantry. In there, behind the shelves, there's a space. Isabel helped Rosa into the pantry and discovered that one of the shelf units concealed a narrow space, barely large enough for the two of them to squeeze into. They had just pulled the shelf back into place when they heard the front door open. Footsteps echoed through the house, heavy, deliberate, unhurried. Vargas moved with the confidence of a man in his own domain. A predator without fear. Rosa, he called, his voice sickeningly gentle. I've brought you something, a new friend to keep you company. Isabel felt Rosa trembling against her in the dark space. She wrapped an arm around the older girl's shoulders, willing her to be silent. The footsteps entered the kitchen, paused, then moved toward the basement door. There was a moment of silence, followed by a sound that chilled Isabel's blood. A soft, menacing laugh. The door is open, Vargas said to himself. Now, who could have done that, I wonder? The footsteps moved quickly now, down the basement stairs. Isabel and Rosa held their breath, waiting for the shout of rage when he discovered his prisoner gone. It came seconds later, a roar of fury that shook dust from the ceiling. Rosa. The voice was no longer gentle. Where are you, you little? Thundering footsteps on the stairs, then in the kitchen again, drawers being yanked open, plates smashed in anger. I know you're here, Vargas called, his voice tight with rage. You're too weak to have gone far. And I smell something else. Someone else. He sniffed the air like an animal. Another child. The special one from town, perhaps. Isabel. Isabel's heart nearly stopped at the sound of her name. She clutched the bottle of holy water in her pocket, wondering if it would be enough to save them. The footsteps moved closer to the pantry. Two little birds in one cage, Vargas said, his voice dropping to a whisper. How convenient. The pantry door swung open. Through a crack in the shelves, Isabel could see him, the wolf medallion gleaming at his throat, his amber eyes scanning the small space. He took a step inside, reaching for a box of matches on one of the shelves. Come out, wherever you are, he sang softly, striking a match. The small flame illuminated his face from below, turning his features demonic. Isabel knew they had seconds before he discovered their hiding place. She removed the cork from the bottle of holy water and prepared to throw it. But before she could move, something extraordinary happened. The ghost children materialized around Vargas. Not just Marisol, Miguel, and Lucia, but all of them. Dozens of translucent forms filling the pantry with their cold light. Javier stood at their center, his young face terrible with righteous anger. "You," he said, his voice echoing strangely. "You who took our lives, our futures, our dreams." Vargas' eyes widened in shock and fear. The match fell from his fingers, extinguishing on the floor. "No," he whispered. "You're not real. You can't be real." "We are real," Marisol said, moving closer to him. "As real as the pain you caused us, as real as the lives you stole." Vargas backed away, but the wall was behind him. "Stay back," he shouted. "I command you to stay back." The ghost children laughed, a chilling sound like ice breaking on a frozen pond. "You have no power over us anymore," Miguel told him. "But we have power over you." As one, the ghosts surged forward, passing through Vargas' body like a wave of Arctic cold. He screamed, a sound of pure terror that made Isabel cover her ears. When the ghosts pulled back, Vargas collapsed to the floor, his face ashen, his eyes staring at horrors only he could see. "Now, Isabel," Javier called. "Take Rosa and run. We can't hold him long." Isabel pushed aside the shelf and helped Rosa out of their hiding place. They stepped over Vargas' shaking form and fled through the kitchen toward the broken window that offered escape. Behind them, Vargas' screams had turned to whimpers, then to a strange, gurgling laugh. "You can't run from me," he called after them, his voice unnaturally high. "I'll find you. I always find my special ones." Isabel boosted Rosa through the window first, then scrambled after her. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the overgrown grounds of the hacienda. "Which way?" Rosa gasped, leaning heavily on her walking stick. Before Isabel could answer, the sound of an engine broke the silence. Not Vargas' truck starting, but another vehicle approaching fast along the rough track that led to the hacienda. "The police," Isabel said with relief. "They found my note." Sure enough, a police car burst into view, followed by Dona Lucia's ancient pickup truck. Officer Mendoza was out of his car before it had fully stopped, his gun drawn. Dona Lucia was right behind him, her face fierce with determination. "Isabel," she cried, running to embrace her granddaughter. "Gracias a Dios. And Rosa, it's true. You found her." Officer Mendoza approached more cautiously, his eyes scanning the area for threats. "Where is he?" he asked Isabel. "Where's Vargas?" "In the pantry," Isabel replied, pointing to the house. "But be careful. He's not, right? The ghosts." Officer Mendoza's expression was grim. "Stay here with Dona Lucia, both of you." He nodded to Rosa. "We'll get you to a doctor soon, young lady. Just hold on a little longer." He moved toward the house, gun at the ready. Dona Lucia wrapped her shawl around Rosa's thin shoulders and helped her to the pickup truck. "How did you find us?" Isabel asked as her grandmother settled Rosa in the cab. "Your note was very clear, Majida," Dona Lucia said, "though I was afraid we might be too late. The school called when you didn't return after lunch." "I had to come alone," Isabel explained. The ghost said. A gunshot interrupted her, the sound echoing across the small valley. Then another. Isabel and Dona Lucia froze, staring at the hacienda with wide eyes. Long minutes passed before Officer Mendoza emerged, his face ashen, his gun holstered. He walked slowly to where they waited, his eyes troubled. "Is he?" Dona Lucia couldn't finish the question. Officer Mendoza nodded once. "He's dead." "But I didn't." He glanced at Isabel, then at Rosa in the truck. "It doesn't matter now. What matters is that you're safe and this is over." But Isabel knew it wasn't entirely over. "The well," she said quietly. "Behind the stables. That's where the bodies are." Marisol, Miguel, Lucia, all of them. Officer Mendoza looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll send for help. We'll find them all, Isabel. I promise. On the drive back to San Isidro, with Rosa sleeping against Dona Lucia's shoulder in the cab of the pickup and Officer Mendoza following behind, Isabel watched the landscape pass in silence. The ghost children were gone. She could feel their absence like a change in air pressure. Had they found peace now that their killer was dead and their bodies would soon be properly laid to rest? She hoped so. They took Rosa directly to the small clinic in town, where the doctor pronounced her severely dehydrated and malnourished, but otherwise physically unharmed. Her parents, who had believed her dead or lost forever, wept with joy at her return. It was past midnight when Isabel and Dona Lucia finally returned to their small house. Isabel was exhausted, but somehow knew she wouldn't sleep. There were too many questions still spinning in her mind. Abuela, she said as her grandmother tucked her into bed. What happened in the hacienda? To Vargas? Dona Lucia sat on the edge of the bed, her weathered face solemn in the lamplight. Officer Mendoza told me while you were saying goodbye to Rosa. Vargas shot himself. Twice. Twice. Isabel frowned. How is that possible? It isn't, Dona Lucia said simply. Not for a living man. But perhaps for one driven mad by the spirits of those he wronged. She shrugged. Mendoza will report it as suicide. It's simpler that way. Isabel nodded slowly. The ghosts, they're gone now. I can't feel them anymore. They have found their rest, Majida, Dona Lucia said, stroking Isabel's hair. As must you. Sleep now. It's over. But even as her grandmother spoke the words, Isabel wasn't sure they were true. As she drifted toward sleep, she thought she felt a familiar coolness in the air, heard the faint whisper of a voice she recognized. Thank you, Isabel, Marisol's voice murmured. We'll be watching over you. Always. In the days that followed, the story of Rosa's rescue and the discovery of the children's remains at the abandoned hacienda spread through San Isidro and beyond. Officials from Mexico City came to investigate, and reporters from national newspapers sought interviews with the brave girl who solved the mystery. Isabel declined to speak with them. How could she explain what had really happened? That the dead had guided her, had helped her save Rosa, had perhaps even exacted their own justice on their killer? No one would believe such things, except perhaps her grandmother and Officer Mendoza, who had seen enough to shake their understanding of the world. The traveling carnival packed up and left town ahead of schedule, their entertainment director's death casting a pall over the festivities. No one connected the other carnival workers to Vargas' crimes, and perhaps there was no connection. Evil sometimes walks alone. Summer faded into fall. School resumed, and life in San Isidro returned to its normal rhythms. Rosa, after weeks of recovery, joined Isabel's class, the two girls now bound by an experience few could comprehend. They rarely spoke of what had happened at the hacienda, but sometimes, walking home together, they would pause at the old oak tree at the edge of town and leave small offerings, flowers, shiny pebbles, pieces of candy, for friends only they could see. And sometimes, in the quiet of night, Isabel would wake to find a familiar coolness in the air and know that she was not alone. The ghost children kept their promise, watching over her, protecting her as she had protected others. Some in town whispered that Isabel Vega had her grandmother's gift, that she could see beyond the veil between worlds. Others said it was just a child's imagination, a way of processing the trauma she had experienced. Isabel neither confirmed nor denied these rumors. Some truths were not meant for everyone. On the anniversary of the day she had first seen the ghost children, Isabel visited the cemetery where Marisol, Miguel, Lucia, and the others had finally been laid to rest. She placed marigolds on each small grave, whispering their names like a prayer. As she turned to leave, she saw a girl standing beneath a cypress tree at the edge of the cemetery. A girl she had never seen before, with sad eyes and a tentative smile. Living or dead? Isabel couldn't tell at first glance, but it didn't matter. She approached the girl with an outstretched hand and a gentle question. Do you need help? Because that was her gift, in the end. Not just to see those caught between worlds, but to hear their stories, to help them find peace or justice, or simply a moment of connection in their loneliness. And if the living couldn't understand what she did or how she did it, that was all right. Understanding wasn't necessary for compassion. The girl took Isabel's hand, her touch warm and real, and began to speak. In San Isidro, people still tell the story of Isabel Vega in the summer of 1980, when a quiet child with observant eyes saved lives with the help of those already lost. They tell it as a fable, a legend, a ghost story to send shivers down the spine. But Isabel knows the truth. It's not a story about ghosts. Not really. It's a story about listening to voices others ignore. About believing in the impossible when necessary. About finding courage in the face of darkness. And sometimes, even now, when children gather in the plaza as twilight falls and the first stars appear, they swear they can see them, Marisol, Miguel, Lucia, and the others, playing among them, forever young, forever watching, forever free. For in San Isidro, the veil between worlds has always been thin. And those with eyes to see and hearts to understand know that death is not the end of the story. It's only the beginning. Welcome to the Ghastly Journal. Until next time, dear listeners, sleep well if you can.